David Brewster here on an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Whitesnake, 1978 to 1984. And I did put together a Chordplay episode for Whitesnake a couple of years ago, and we mainly focused on John Sykes, you know, the 87 self-titled album. But I did hit Slide It In, Love Ain't No Stranger, and also Wings of the Storm, you know, from Slip of the Tongue, Steve Vai on guitar. But Whitesnake's essential. You know, their early output was very blues rock influenced, and they formed in London, England in 1978. They've had, 13 studio albums, you know, a handful of EPs and live albums, and definitely have gone on to become one of the most popular rock groups, you know, in the entire world. And this lesson's mainly going to focus on the original incarnation of Whitesnake, so we're really not going to go past 1984. And we're going to hit, you know, some songs and riffs and ideas from Bernie Marsden and Moody. And, you know, we've already kind of hit John Sykes, but it's really interesting to notice. I mean, Whitesnake's technically David Coverdale's vehicle, you know, that he formed, you know, post Deep Purple. And consistently through Whitesnake's entire career, he's had, you know, just phenomenal guitarists at the helm, you know, on stage and in the studio. So check out this image with, you know, a dozen guitarists that have worked with Whitesnake, and there's some world-class talent right here. As I mentioned, this lesson's going to focus on the early years of Whitesnake, so it's going to go all the way back to the EP, you know, Snakebite, and then we're going to work our way all the way to Slide It In. And the band did seem to kind of shatter around the Slide It In era. I guess technically around 1982, 1983, it started to kind of dismantle, and then the next thing you knew, John Sykes was in the fold, and then the turnover and the changes in the group, you know, really kind of just start to take effect. But this is the early, you know, this is that kind of early period with Moody and Bernie Marsden on guitar. The opening, that's the song Come On from the Snakebite EP, and this is technically, I guess, part of the chorus, and we've got this. Verse right there, but it starts with just kind of a variation of the opening, like, intro riff, this kind of, you know, 70s kind of partial chord A riff right here, and then walk over to that D, you know, D power chord right there, and then do it again, and then right there do a G power chord like this, you know, kind of Malcolm Young style, or Pete Townsend, however you want to think of that, and then move back to that D power chord again, and then do the A riff again, and then do that G to D tag, and then you've got this little number, which is really cool. It's basically an A octave. So we're literally kind of, you know, using the C note on the A string right there. Sneaky little riff, but I like that. It's very simple. It's just an octave and, you know, that C note, but the way it's put together, it has this really cool kind of sneaky groove to it. Really cool. And then do a G to a D power chord there, and then repeat that riff again, and then a D to a G power chord, and we're going back to E. Killer song though, I love that tune. The next example is a pretty obscure early Whitesnake song. This is Free Flight from the Trouble album, and it's this busy single note riff, and there's really just one chord, but something like this. something like that. And it's basically E minor pentatonic right there. You know, one more time. And I like those double picked, you know, moments right there. It kind of challenges your pick hand, your picking hand. And right there, just bang on this E7 sharp 9, you know, the Hendrix chord. And then do it again. And there's actually two guitars. There's another guitar that does like an octave, like this. So if I loop both of those with the TC Electronic Ditto looper, you can hear what it sounds like. So there's guitar 1. Cool song and a really cool riff too. Okay, up next we're going to slow it down a little bit, and this is also a very long song title, but Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City, which is from the Snakebite EP, and you can also find it on the Trouble album. They kind of re-recorded it for that one, but something like this, pretty cool. Starts with this A minor 7 kind of idea. And you can think of that as like a D over F sharp or a little piece of B minor, you know, either way. But there's the A minor 7 riff. And then you just loop that like this. D minor 7 right here. And you're going to kind of move that up to a partial E minor 7, or you could also think of that as a G over B right there. Either way. You know, I like that kind of, it's kind of mimicking the first riff. And I just moved over to D. Eventually you're going to go back to that A minor 7. Then it gets dreamy there for a second. There's an F major 7, and then a D minor 7, and then you want to end with A minor 7 right there. You know, really cool song. Up next we have Spit It Out, which is from the Slide It In album, and it's a pretty simple riff, but I've always liked it like this. Short and sweet and pretty easy, but E power chord, and then a B power chord to D power chord. And then you've got this kind of back and forth thing happening here between this D and C sharp. So you're kind of implying, you know, a D power chord and an A over C sharp. And then grab an A power chord and then end on E. Pretty simple, but a rockin' riff. Up next we have the song Lovehunter, which is from the Lovehunter album, and we're in open G tuning right here, and it has this real swampy kind of bluesy sound. That's also why I changed guitars. But open G, we have D, G, D, G, B, D. And it's pretty common, like for, you know, bluesy, you know, slide stuff, and it has this really cool sound. 7, really. And we're just hitting that B flat because we're technically, in a different tuning, and kind of, smearing into that G note. Really simple example, but I love those swampy blues riffs like that, where there's not a whole lot going on, but it does capture your attention and it sets up this rhythmic, kind of feel or whatever. Really cool. Okay, up next we have the very popular Slow and Easy, which is from the Slide It In album, and we're still in open G, and we're also using a slide. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time a slide's actually made an appearance here on this channel, but something like this. G, and we're basically flirting, kind of moving into the C, and then he's using those open strings, which that's technically, 2 G's. That open A and that open G, but they're both, G notes now because of this tuning. That C and vibrate it, for the verse, and then you repeat that riff. And then back to that C, and then back to the riff. And then right there move up to D, and then you're going to go all the way up to this F, which is so cool. And he kind of like, arpeggiates it a little bit. And you kind of hear it slide right down back to the riff. Classic song, and I love those swampy blues, riffs like that, with the slide or without. So cool. The last example is the song Youngblood, which is from the Saints and Sinners album, and it's this hard rockin' D riff, something like this. Something like that. It's basically starting with this D power chord and you're just rocking out, just banging on it. And right there, it's kind of like a partial F power chord, or you could also think of that as a little piece of like D minor 7, and then a partial C right there. And then go back to that D power chord and bang on it. And it's a partial F power chord to a partial G right there. And you're kind of using an open D, on the bass note. And then do the first one again, that F to C. And last time here, it's basically an E power chord to a C power chord right there. And if you don't don't like doing that E right there, you could also do this one. It's kind of choose your own adventure right there. But I just kind of prefer to keep it all right there. It's an interesting song to notice too, because it's before Slide It In, and it is kind of showing you this like kind of sneak peek of the future sound and this kind of powerful, you know, hard rock direction that Whitesnake would follow in. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Whitesnake, 1978 to 1984. And there's really something important and you know, inspiring about this band, because they've had just such a long legacy of all these great guitarists, you know, great songs. And even though they kind of started, you know, more or less like a blues rock kind of band, and then they evolved into a hard rock, you know, 80s band and 90s, and they're still active today. And it's just interesting to notice like this evolution or evolvement, you know, in their music. It started off, you know, kind of simple and blues based, and then it ended up, you know, this mammoth, you know, giant sound. And definitely, you know, I'm a Whitesnake fan. I think Coverdale is one of the best frontmen, you know, in recent years. Definitely, of course, he's been on the scene for a long time, but he's kind of like, you know, the next step of, you know, someone like Robert Plant. And, you know, great stage presence, good frontman, good singer, you know, lyricist, and definitely, obviously, he really likes working with talented musicians and guitarists. And, you know, Tommy Aldridge is still in the band, which he joined forces, you know, somewhere around 1987. And he's still listed as the official, you know, Whitesnake drummer, which is really cool that he kind of held that position. Of course, it's Tommy Aldridge, you know, he's a monster and a legend. But anyway, you know, Whitesnake's a cool band, so if you're familiar with them, you know, dive back in. And if you're not familiar with them, totally dive in. You know, check out all their stuff, because there's some great music on every album in every era, you know, of this group. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content material. Thank you.